Hello and welcome to this week's edition of B2B NAV. In this week's version, the first of the new year, 2021, I'll be asking Matt some questions and fielding him some of the latest marketing trends that people are discussing.
I feel we should caveat that you've not told me what any of these are before we start.
No, I thought it'd be another fun one to do as a surprise. I've taken a few trends from a few different lists, tried to keep them B2B focused because obviously B2C marketing trends are going to be quite different.
Yep.
So without further ado, I might dive in and
let's go for it.
See what your thoughts are on these.
Let's go for it, why not?
So I'll start you off nice and easy.
Okay.
I guess with everything going on, this probably isn't too much a surprise, but marketers will plan asynchronous events that plug into the funnel.
Okay.
And I can add to that, and this is a direct quote from the article. Your prospects get triggered into the event as they are processed into the right steps of your funnel. They engage with the event through multiple means, like Netflix meets Slack, video content to watch on demand, live streams that play on site, a community of users and fans who can engage. Prospects learn about your solution, watch videos, chat with others, and then get directed to speak to your product team.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess this ties across various different aspects, doesn't it? From virtual events to content hubs to websites, I suppose, across the three kind of primary categories that you kind of touch in there in a way, all around brand, customer engagement. And I think recent times of the pandemic has definitely forced people to reconsider the way they approach that, given they can't see as much as people face to face to showcase products and services and meet with people. So I think you are going to see people addressing and adapting the way they approach that type of event going forward. What I would caveat that with is it's still early days in that, I think. So there's a lot of options out there for virtual events. Obviously, you've got your classic kind of website experience. I've not seen that many people doing it well yet, is what I would say. And I think particularly, which is interesting, following on from a conversation I've had internally this morning here about our side of things, how that maps against that buyer's journey. So whether we do need to have more consideration about offering a differentiated solution, depending on where people are at in that buying cycle. And I've not seen that done well yet, is what I mean. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all.
That we talked about going back probably a few months ago now, is, I guess, the traditional thing that we think about when we start talking about virtual events and online events is primarily this. It happens on a certain date, and it is a series of let's be honest, webinars, and then that's it. That's done. The event's over. Whereas I think what this trend is really talking about is the fact that doesn't need to be over, and that you can drive people in based on where they are in the funnel and continue driving them back to it.
I think it also ties to, if it's just, I don't know, I've genuinely not seen it, what else are you going to come on to, but it also ties into that non-linear experience, because that even a webinar, if you think about that as a virtual event, it's a very linear process. You invite somebody, they turn up, they watch something, they maybe do a call to action, but the likelihood is they'll leave and you follow up with a thanks for attending or sorry you missed it. That's it. That's the view through. Whereas what I get the impression what the trend's kind of forecasting there is that there'll be a more personalised, non-linear route through it. So depending on you, what your needs are, what your objectives are, what you want your customer, visitor, prospect to achieve from their visit in a way is more personalised to them, which is definitely the way we're seeing it going. But,
exactly. And connected to that, I won't count this as a separate trend, but is that we'll see more live interactions rather than it just being broadcast. 'Cause I think the traditional way that you see these sort of things work is it's one-way communication.
Yep.
We talk at somebody through a webinar. Yes, they can chat and they can ask questions, but we know, let's say 70-80% of people probably don't ask questions, and it's all very one-way. So I think we'll start to see, or at least according to this trend, start to see that communication being more two-way, people being able to ask follow-up questions. People being
on mass or on one-on-one? Because I think that's one of the complications that you've got with that kind of prediction is, I agree, in principle it sounds wonderful to have this two-way dialogue amongst attendees and hosts, let's call it, albeit there'll be several occasions where you as the host don't necessarily want your attendees to interact with one another, desire them to have a direct dialogue, for them to even have knowledge of who else is at the event sometimes.
I think either way would still count within this trend that I'm talking about now. Okay. Either way is interaction beyond just being spoken to, because even in the traditional sense of a webinar, when you ask a question, that's still fairly one way. Yeah. I mean, yes, you're asking a question, potentially getting your question answered, but it's still very anonymous. You're not having a dialogue, you've just submitted an anonymous question that may or may not get answered.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
So that'll be interesting to see how that one pans out. Obviously very tied into what we're doing in general.
Yeah.
Adopting an omnichannel marketing strategy will apparently happen more in 2021. How do you feel about that, and how do you think that ties into everything else that we're seeing?
I think omnichannel for me personally, and BDB and B2B marketing was a phrase that came up more and more in 2020, probably started in 2019, was a phrase the first I heard of. Obviously, Omni's been around a while, but it applied to a marketing kind of technique of this omnichannel experience. What I would say on that one is, and I might run the risk of repeating myself when you say I don't know what the others are, but in the sense of that's nothing new. I would say wherever your brand can be found or wherever people can interact or engage with your brand, you should be offering a consistent and engaging experience. I think that's more the point. Whether you call it omnichannel or you call it a considered strategic communication strategy, I would say is probably the same thing. But I don't think there's many people that do it very well at the minute. So I think that people want to be on everything. They want to be on LinkedIn. I see it more probably from the social side of things. We need to have a presence on LinkedIn. We need to have a presence on Twitter. We need to have a presence on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is these days, even TikTok potentially. But when you're seeing that on the social side of things, it is sporadic, people's usage. And I think that's where you get more easily exposed of having a poor presence or an inconsistent presence at the minute.
Yeah, and I think we see that quite a lot. But then thinking back to some of the campaigns that we've done in 2021, so just in one case, we personally ran a rather successful ABM campaign for a client. And that was very omnichannel, and that we were working across multiple channels. And I think anything like that is inherently going to be omnichannel. It's not thinking about what can we do with digital. It's not thinking about what can we do with our traditional sales team. It's taking all the different channels that you have at your disposal and thinking strategically about how you can make that work together and achieve your objective. In that case, obviously driving leads from particular target accounts.
I also think tied back to the evolution of the evolved content hub, online event offer and everything else, rather than having this omnipresence where you've maybe got 10 or 20 different places where people can find you, consolidating that into one central source of truth where you've got them all of the consistent experience. And obviously they've got to be able to find it and they've got to be invited to it, so it's a slightly different play of how you get people there. But that's also what that provides as well, where you can have everything kind of housed in one building, one unit where they can come and engage with your branded experience on a consistent basis as well. So it's just tied together probably a bit,
And on the subject of not new, content marketing.
Really?
So content marketing being touted as a must-have of 2021. I think I've definitely heard the term content marketing being bandied around in terms of trends lists for at least 6 or 7 years, probably longer.
What do you class as content marketing? I'm only throwing this back at you because I think this is the point that always makes me sort of laugh a little bit.
For me, it's just using content to drive continued engagement with your audience.
Content being anything?
Pretty much anything. Blog posts, potentially emails, specific piece of collateral that you're creating, white papers, things like that. Obviously, then we go into the social media content, video content, all that kind of thing.
So for me, what I mean is content marketing is definitely nothing new, because if you take all that away that you've just said, you're not actually doing anything. So it's evolved. What you would say is the communications strategy and your communications tactics, almost in a way, have evolved over time. And there's still a place for email, there's still a place for editorial, there's still a place for press exhibitions, there's still a place for video. There's AI now and VR and AR and all these other wonderful things that are coming to life. It's all content. You're still producing something that you want people to engage with. And I think what's more important these days beyond content is the content strategy. And I think that's where people go wrong, that they decide we're going to do a video but don't think why the video, how it will be amplified, where people can find it, what's the call to action, what's the next step in the journey. So I think when it comes to content, the strategic aspects are equally, if not more important than what content you're producing. Yeah,
and from my point of view, I feel like what I often see is there's an awful lot of content out there, huge volumes of content, because there's very few companies that aren't these days participating in some kind of content marketing, whether that's blogs or white papers or whatever else it might be. But I think a lot of that content is really superficial in terms of the level of depth and value it's adding. So like you say, if you think through the strategy as to why you're doing it and who it's for and what value they need to be getting from it, will lead you to creating better content that makes a difference. And whether that difference is getting thousands more downloads or whether that difference is just getting those few key customers to actually engage with it and because of that choose to buy from you again, or choose to at least have a better perception of you, I think that's where it can really make a difference.
But I think that's an interesting point in terms of quality over quantity, isn't it? And I think that again comes back to more with the ABM approach and be more targeted with your efforts. But just linked on that point while we're on it, I saw something the other day, I can't remember on one of the platforms or something, it must be somebody that I follow or something, but it was in relation to that concept of like stop selling, start helping, which we've heard over the years now quite a few times, and it said stop selling and start educating. And actually it was something that just maybe you don't see much these days. It kind of cuts through the noise and makes you sit back and think about it, and actually it's very relevant to the type of content you produce. So helping, educating, I know it's on the same kind of scale, but in the sense of even with the algorithms across some of the social media platforms these days, likes are being replaced by saves and shares and things like that, with more important metrics to amplify the content further, which again shows that people tend to save if it's something that they can refer back to again, come back to, and it's an educative piece beyond just clickbait content, which is what a lot of people, what you were referencing there, are guilty of, just throwing content out there trying to get clicks, likes, traffic numbers up. So
I think I'm fairly sick of seeing the top 5 reasons to do this type thing, and then the top 5 reasons are fairly superficial. They don't add any value, and it's just something anybody with like,
but it's the exact same thing as this, in the sense of, you know, we put this out and we call this top 2021 trends. Everybody's discussing that, and that's why I think it's sometimes interesting to pick them apart like we are doing here, to go, that's BS, that is genuine, that's, you know, that's something we can follow up with. So
connected to that one again is something that we've been exploring a little bit this year, and is something that I'm particularly interested in, is more interactive forms of content. So I think for years, obviously, and we've talked about on a previous podcast, we've seen white papers being kind of the go-to in B2B. So just thinking through how we can create something that's more interactive, of which there are many forms of interactivity. So apparently we're going to be seeing more of that in 2021, and I hope that's true for us and our clients as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think overall it probably links back to cutting through the noise again. So in the sense of, but I also think it's the natural evolution of content supported by technology. So I would say to cut through the noise, you've got to be doing something different and differentiated. So that goes for all marketing and all communications, I would say. There's more and more people struggling to cut through the noise, and I think particularly now with more and more people stuck at home, more and more people working from home, and with the inability to travel, so people are consuming content more one-on-one at the desk space with a laptop, I guess. So you've got to work that bit harder again to make it engaging, to hold the attention of them if you're not in front of that person, which is why I think it needs to be more interactive. I think technology is enabling us to do that, but I also think it's heavily linked to more digitally savvy, digital natives coming of age, who are either influencing the buying process, commanding the buying process, or controlling the buying process. And when you actually break it down to that kind of level, I think you're only going to see more, because they demand more. The younger generations demand a higher quality of content. So there will always be people who want a technical white paper. That obviously has its place, particularly in the B2B space, and some of the more mature individuals across our clients and prospects and listeners, hopefully, will want that in that format. They want a technical paper. The younger guys want an interactive, engaging experience that makes things pop, and we always try that with
depends very much on the buyer journey as well, and where you are in that. If I'm buying something technical and I'm quite far down that journey, in that I'm evaluating either specifically buying that product or service or comparing it versus another one, at that point I probably want some detailed technical information. But when I'm earlier on in that process and I'm first learning, or I'm doing very early stage comparisons, I'm probably more like interested in surface level content and not wanting to get so far into the technical side of it. And I think it's at that point that we could do with really trying to, like you say, cut through the noise and stand out. Although I can only speak for myself really, and say that I'll with best of intentions, I'll download a lot of white papers, I'll save a lot of blog posts, and I'll never go back to them. So I really need something from me in that case to stand out. So when I go on it, it does something that makes me pay attention to it.
I think it's a good point. I save a lot, I share a lot, I bookmark a lot. Sorry, don't share a lot, I save a lot and bookmark a lot of things, put them in various folders of things that I'll come back to at some point and never get back to them. Whereas if I'm really caught in it, I'll share it. If it's with you, I'll share it with you there and then and go, have you seen this? This is cool, or whatever. Whereas, as you say, you tend to bookmark and save and have good intentions but never actually get to it, do you? So, but I think it's a really strong point of mapping it to the way you're at, but mapping it to the buyer's journey. I always come back to that of like, what's the purpose, what's the objective, what's the purpose of it, what do you expect them to do next? And that's quite often lacking in those circumstances, I guess. So.
No surprise on the next one on the list, because I think it was number 1 on all the lists we looked at last year until presumably COVID shook everything up a little bit. It's going to be chatbots and conversational marketing. And I know we've talked about it a few times in the last year. We've actually had some experience working with it this year. I know you've not been hands-on with all of it, but what have your
I think there continues to be a skepticism around them still, I would say. And I think, again, that's linked to the age of the users and the buyers. because I think the more mature guys have got more of a skeptical approach towards them, and the younger generations and the modern B2B buyers are more akin to it, because that's how they solve their personal issues. That's how they address things online in their B2C lives as a consumer. They're used to chatbots now, and they're on websites. I also think the lockdown, COVID, the pandemic has rapidly accelerated the digital adoption, including chatbots and including live chat and different ways to quickly engage with people.
And I've seen that quite a lot, even with just being a consumer. A lot of shops that I've had to deal with in the last sort of 6 to 9 months or so of basically force you down the live chat route, because that's what they've had to do to deal with the volume of inquiries that they're getting through. So that means I'm more used to it, and therefore I'm more likely to embrace and expect it from a B2B brand.
The thing that I'd say that's probably a bit controversial is I don't buy into conversational marketing. That's what I would say, having thought about this a lot. So chatbots are chatbots. That's what they are. That's what they do, and they serve a purpose. I'd argue they can form part of the marketing mix, but they're not a marketing tool, in my opinion. They facilitate a conversation, and they can push people towards content or towards a call to action or towards contacting you, which is a facilitation of an interaction. Conversational marketing, I think, is actually where the skeptic comes up in me, that you go, is it a conversation? It's not really. It's a structured dialogue, I guess, in a way.
I think it's more about it being a conversational style. So again, I'll talk about it from my point of view.
But that's where the skepticism is, that it's a bot, isn't it? If you know what I mean. I do know what you mean.
But so for me, it's more about it slightly elevates the experience. Instead of when you interact with it and you're seeing a decision tree and it's prompting you with messages, it feels more or less formal, less like a scary process, and more like I'm engaging with. I know you're not engaging with another person, but it has more of that kind of feel to it, which I think just slightly elevates the customer experience, and left me, in the particular case I'm thinking of, left me like feeling really positive about my interaction with a bot. Whereas I think if I'd have filled in a form, I'd have.
I also think if you get it right, it works really well, and it's a slick experience like you've described there. There's far too many people that don't invest enough time on it and get it considerably wrong, is what I would say. Which
and I think we've talked about this before, is that they're not quick and easy to set up.
Yep.
I think they can be a good tool, and we've seen them used quite successfully this year. And we talked about just in the podcast that I think went out a couple of weeks ago, that we were surprised to see people saying thank you to the bot all the time, things like that. So
they're also quite expensive, aren't they, in the grand scheme of things? I mean, depending on people's budgets and individual needs, as a part of that marketing mix, which there's a skepticism associated with at the minute. The pricing model of quality chatbots, let's call it a quality chatbot software, is quite expensive. So I think that's another barrier to overcome in that area, particularly if there's still that skepticism around it. What I would say I don't think I am a skeptic of it, but in the sense of there's a slight skepticism there with me. They do work. That's what I'm saying. So I have a first-hand experience now through Virtual Visitor and the platforms we've done. They are working. They're great adoption, great interactions with the customers. People are finding what they want with limited involvement from you. So I mean, it serves its purpose for sure. Yeah.
The next one is something we've definitely covered in the last year or two, and this is one I'd say I'm a little bit more of a skeptic of, at least from a B2B sense, but we do see it keep coming up in lists, and that's voice search and voice search marketing and making that work. Yep.
From a B2B perspective, I don't think we're there yet, is my humble take on it. I think there's some cool things you can try, but I don't think it would lead to business or sales generation or growth, personally. I think it would make you look like you're at the forefront of digital transformation, trying things and putting Amazon Alexa flash announcements out to your business, and there's loads of different things you can try with it. I just don't think it's there yet, personally. What I would say is, and this is just anecdotally, I was speaking to a friend the other day. His daughter's working from home, probably not a dissimilar age from your side of your family, and his daughter's doing this at home learning and school education at the minute, and she's been asked to find this, do this, search for this all on the internet. And I think she's about 9, the girl. She's doing everything by voice, which is just a really strange thing. So I think we're a couple of generations out yet for that to really come to the forefront. But she uses voice on her phone, she uses voice on the laptop, she uses voice to search the internet. And it's just interesting. Even that maybe triggered a thought in me the other day of going, oh, is it that generation that's actually going to bring that to the forefront of B2B marketing? But they're probably 5 to 10 years away, I would think.
Because apparently, in terms of numbers, we're looking at having 5 billion voice searches by the year 2021. Yeah, which I suspect is considerably lower than traditional searches.
I use it now. Do you?
I do. To be honest, I would say I was probably a bigger user a year or two ago. I think I've slowly become more frustrated. Every time it makes assumes a word wrong or makes a mistake, I get a little bit more annoyed, and I'm less likely to use it next time. Yeah. As I get random reminders on my phone, like 6 hours later, asking me to do something or buy something that's completely different.
But I think even the at-home speakers systems, so the Alexas and the Home Pods and Apple Pods or whatever they're called now, and the Google, whatever they're called, all the different versions of them. I think we've got too many different infrastructures in our house at the minute. We've got like one of each rather than a consistent unified platform.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But those are forcing it a little bit. That you're starting to get more comfortable.
I think we're still probably using it multiple times a day, and I no longer feel completely stupid asking Google to do something in public. But like you say, I think we're probably still a number of years off that being a thing. A big thing, at least for B2B.
I think it's a consideration. So if you were thinking about updating your website at the minute and updating that journey and so on, it should be in the back of your mind that voice search could influence it going down the line if you're going to keep that website for a longer period of time.
I think that probably the earliest place we're likely to see that being used in B2B is if you think of any search result that you get on Google that has a rich snippet. For example, if you Google a definition of something, you'll see that definition come up in a box on Google instead of having to click through to a website. Yeah. If you can have educational content on your site that's structured in that way in terms of it being a couple of paragraphs explaining something that people are likely to search, that's where you're likely to have something that's going to come up in voice search.
I think that's where you'll see it when it applies across social. That's when you'll see it when it cascades out through various products where somebody's more comfortable saying, show me articles on whatever it may be. But again, I don't think we're there yet. I don't think it's our generation. So I think it is a continued thing to be monitoring, but I don't think it's a hot trend, I wouldn't say.
Something that'll come up on the list for probably a few years to come then.
I think so, yeah. But then I'm sort of smirking to myself here that, the podcast we did about the pandemic last year when we were like, this seems like something to keep our eye on. Voice search could be the explosive piece of kit that we're all missing at the minute, but I doubt it, highly doubt it.
So the last one I'm going to pull out today is something we've talked about quite a few times recently with clients, and that's data visualization, and that being kind of one of the top wanted marketing skills of 2021. Yeah,
I think that's where you're moving more toward the consultative, the move where marketing's going of proving your worth is what I would say. So in the sense of, I probably bleated on about it too much on previous podcasts, but in the sense of marketers have hidden in the shadows for many years, not wanting to be held accountable to their actions. Technology, data, analytics, and now the visualization of that follows on from that is how we ultimately prove our worth. So if you can execute that and show that with confidence as an agency working with a company, that one, you're not afraid to stand by those results, two, you've got a slick, sophisticated process of how you can bring that to life, because people don't want reams and reams of analysis and paperwork. And
it also takes a huge amount of time to put together, because I think part of data visualization is often having all that data feeding in automatically and it helping you to pull out some of that key information that you just don't have access to otherwise, because you want to make decisions based on cost per leads or a cost per acquisition or whatever it might be. But working out a cost per acquisition involves understanding what's converted in your Salesforce CRM, understanding where that's come from, understanding not only the last touch point from a marketing point of view, but also the first touch point and everything else in between, and getting into a bit of attribution modeling, which, unless you're willing to go across 5 different systems and spend an awful lot of time analysing that regularly, it just isn't very practical to do. But whereas if you start having it visualised in the likes of Power BI or other data visualisation software, you can have that at your fingertips. You can filter it, see what campaigns are doing what, and start making decisions.
But I think that's the key point. It's great having these dashboards and great having that data beautifully prepared in a lovely visual format for you. You've got to look at it. And I think that's what the biggest challenge at the minute, that people are now getting, I want a dashboard, cool. Do you actually look at it? Do you analyse those results? Do you interpret them? And do you take some necessary actions to either improve them or optimise what you're doing? And I think that is it sounds stupid, but everybody has lovely business plans, lovely reports, lovely board reports every month, but how many people really take the time to reflect on them?
And I'd say with one of our clients, we went through quite a big exercise towards the end of last year of looking at what they'd have on a dashboard, all the different stats and metrics that they'd want to include. And with them, the process worked really well. And I think one of the key things is really paring down what you might want to show on that dashboard, because you can throw every stat at it that you want, but a lot of them don't mean that much, or they're interesting but not useful.
But that's where it needs that thought, due care and consideration, not we used to have this report, make that into a dashboard.
Yeah.
What's the important bits? What are the pages? And this is what we used to do with board reports and business plans and proposals of what are the 3-4 key pages that you turn to. And everybody does it. If you watch a report, there'll be 3 things that you actually look at. They're the 3 things that should be in the dashboard, complemented by some other information, not War and Peace.
And understanding, obviously, how everything ties back to your business objectives. So, and
also benchmark. I was going to say I could do this all day now, but benchmarking is important. So having the dashboard is important, having the data in a lovely visual format, but is it good, bad, indifferent against the industry and against your previous performance? So, yeah.
Okay. And that's it from me in terms of trends. Matt, I will leave it to you to hand over since you've got it so perfectly memorised.
Nicely done. Nice. Thanks for joining us this week, guys. Hopefully you found that useful for us to pick apart and play around with some of the predicted 21 B2B marketing trends. Join us next week. I'm not quite sure what we'll be covering yet, but in the planning process with that. But in the meantime, feel free to check out www.b2bknowledge.com, our online ungated content hub, helping our clients, prospects and listeners navigate the ever-evolving B2B marketing landscape. So thanks very much. Thanks, Ollie. I'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Cheers.